Hey guys, Pretendersaur here. People always talk about how Fallout New Vegas is better than Fallout 4, how Morrowind had so much more kind of character development than Skyrim did, and that the writing for the Mass Effect series got worse and worse every single iteration. It seems like there are more and more developers out there that are just making fewer role-playing games and far more kind of action-orientated games. Shadowrun actually started out as a pen and paper role-playing game, much like, Dungeons and Dragons, except set in a completely kind of different world. We are now projected far into the future, and you have hackers and drone pilots and things, but magic has been reawakened in this world, and with that has come all these metahumans. So you still have orcs and dwarves and humans alongside them and trolls and things, but they now sit alongside spirit conjurers and hackers, or deckers as they're called in this world, and they all work in tandem with each other, so they create this really interesting world that I don't think a lot of games or lots of kind of developers have explored before. It's a world where there are no more governments and there are no more countries really. It's more about corporations being in control and fighting for power, and on the surface they have this veneer of professionalism and success in their product, but underlying it all there's so many underhand deals and kind of bargains being made and threats being made, and along those lines of legality are people called Shadowrunners. Those are the guys who are, committing these crimes or doing these deals to make sure, the overlords are happy, and that's where you survive and that's where you exist in this world. And with this unique and intriguing world, Harebrained Studios seem to have tried to create an antidote for those action-oriented games and try to create a world that really feels like it exists and feels much more involved. The world itself looks, totally broken and dilapidated. There are these enormous kind of steel-clad skyscrapers, buzzing neon signs that are really contrasted with dingy living conditions and, shoddy markets and slums and things, and they live side by side. You can practically smell the sewage in some of these places. The Hong Kong location is also really interesting as well. It draws a ton of inspiration from kind of Chinese culture and Chinese customs. In Hong Kong, there's also this force called Qi, which is this kind of magical, physical manifestation of Feng Shui, and the way you kind of organize slums or the way you organize your office space, that can actually channel this Qi and affect the fortunes of your company, your family, or your friends. And from drawing from this Chinese culture, you add this other layer to what's already a very cool and interesting world. First off, there is a lot of reading. Personally, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I really like the idea of, creating a new character each time I play a game. When you're playing a game like Witcher 3, for example, they're pre-existing characters, they have their own story and their own kind of future, and so it's really important to have, well-acted, well-recorded voice lines. When I play games like, Fallout or Mass Effect or Shadowrun, I'm playing to kind of create my own character and affect the world, and I think you can only really do that through a text-based kind of system. And luckily, Shadowrun has excellent writing. Everything from the dialogue options to the descriptions of the world around you, everything is so detailed and well thought out and well realized, and that, along with the really cool interesting visuals, helps kind of paint that story between 100% reading and 100% imagination to everything being pre-rendered and on rails. It really strides that line really well. Every interaction is written really interestingly. A lot of the times, you're communicating and interacting with these members of these kind of underworld, and your dialogue options reflect that, and it feels really grounded in this kind of intimidating world. But it's also on this really interesting backdrop of, magic and technology in this kind of Blade Runner-esque world. And crucially, it's a world that kind of moves around you. When you interact it and make choices in it, people are affected. NPCs, your team members, the overall mission, everything is affected by how you communicate, and it's all done very well. You end up going on this really interesting journey with your teammates as well, so at the end of every run you can kind of ask them about how they felt about it and try to get them to open up a bit. And I found that you kind of learn so much about them, because you learn about their past, you learn about where they've come from, about their family and their loved ones and how they ended up in this position. And so as they tell you those stories, you kind of learn more and more about the world around you, how you affect it, and how you're part of this world as well. The combat's really engaging too, and it's really in depth. So in most kind of tactical games, you have a move step and you have an action step. So it can be, move here, heal, move here, attack, or, any combination of the two. Whereas this, it's more of an action pool. So you have a set of points that you could use to either, do those things, but that gives you far more flexibility in the abilities that you have and the choices you have. So, you could either summon half a dozen spirits, for example, to attack your enemy. You can use drones instead. You can steal control of opponents' drones. You can set up ambush points or traps and things. And it's a far more fluid system than I think any other kind of tactical RPG like Fire Emblem or Tactics Ogre or anything like that. It's easily the most flexible and varied kind of combat system that I've experienced. And there's great mission variety too. A lot of other games just kind of make you go from point A to point B, kill a thing, maybe pick up an amulet and then come back again. Whereas with this, it really reminds me a lot of the old KOTOR days where, one mission you might be solving a murder, or you might be disciplining a subordinate, or you might be robbing artifacts from a museum. There are so many more things that you can do with a system like this. But also because of the writing, you actually care about doing all these things. And you care about why you would do some jobs over other jobs. And each of them have an effect on where the end story goes, and your relationships with the main characters in the game all change on what actions you choose to do, and what missions you choose to do, and what the outcome ends up being. And my kind of overall problem with games like Fallout 4 is you feel so separated from the world because everything you do doesn't really have an effect. It's like, being on the phone with one of those automated phone call services, and you're, giving them different responses, and every single time it's coming up with the same canned answer. So it doesn't matter if you kill the target, you trick the target, you reason with the target, or you just stole what you needed from them while they were still walking around. The end result is always the same. The end result is always the NPC going, tick, thank you for completing the mission. And I think that feels really, really shallow compared to a game like Shadowrun, where every single decision you choose to make and every single optional objective you choose to do, there's a reason for doing it. And that affects either future missions with the same person, or it affects the companies that they're with, or the corporations they're fighting against. They all affect each other, and that's really, really important for me in creating this believable world, in creating a world that I feel a part of and I can change. Because ultimately, the motivation for me wanting to do these missions and wanting to change things shouldn't just be, I want to go shoot this new cool gun. It should be because I care about this character, or I care about helping people, or I want to cause destruction, I want to make lots of money. I want those actions to mean something. And Shadowrun does a great job of that, because it gives you these options and you can choose to do whatever you want, and the dialogue options you choose actually change things. And that's really, really empowering. And also, it adds so much more replay value. When you come to the same mission in Fallout 4 for the second, third, fourth time, you already know what's going to happen. And I think for me that really, really depletes its replay value. There's no reason for me to want to play that again, just with maybe more hit points for the enemy, or weaker guns for myself. That isn't really challenging and a reason to keep playing the game for me. Whereas with this, you can create new characters, and because your actions are dictated by what you're saying to other people, you can create a completely different character that behaves completely differently, and other characters react completely differently too, and you end up being in completely different circumstances because this is a new character. And for me, that's what role-playing games is all about. I think the success of Shadowrun Hong Kong, and the reason I enjoyed it so much, is because it really knew what its audience was. It created this detailed and nuanced world that has agency and has real depth to it that people really want to engage with. It's written in a way that invites the player to explore the world and really feel it. Even though you don't have the same kind of open world setting, you want to push out and you want to break those boundaries. And I think that's far more interesting than creating this, in inverted commas, endless world, which is mostly just of pick and kill quests. There's nothing necessarily wrong with doing that. I think for me personally, it was just really important to find a game that didn't do that. I found a game that wanted to give you those choices back and, hark back to a different time of gaming where we had more choices, and okay, it didn't look as pretty or didn't have as many technological advancements, but it was more about the story and the feel of the game. And I think that's what they've done really, really well. So if you like the sound of that, I've left the link down in the description to the game. Let me know what you guys think. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.